Until then, I'm going to share a high-level look at the market, but I'll dive deep with the research that Dr. Yoon and his team have done for us. Inflation remains high, even though the Federal Reserve raised short-term interest rates 3 times. In May, consumer prices rose 8.6% compared to last year, which is well above the Fed's 2-point target. Dr. Yoon anticipates it'll take several months for the Federal Reserve to slow inflation. And it should start slowing sometime in the second half of the year, which is where we are right now. The Fed expects inflation to fall 4.3% by the end of the year. Home sales have basically returned to 2019 levels after 2 years of truly wild conditions. And having been raised in real estate, I've seen nothing like what we have all been through. Single-family and condo sales volume are nearly equal. That suggests that as conditions normalize, the preference for suburbs over the city that we saw during the pandemic could be fading. Specifically, existing home sales declined for the 4th straight month in May. Year over year, existing sales fell by nearly 9%. Dr. Yoon anticipates sales will drop further in coming months because of the affordability challenges and the sharp rise in mortgage rates. Nonetheless, homes priced appropriately are selling quickly. It just depends on what your seller thinks is appropriate. Despite higher mortgage rates, home prices have continued to rise. Prices have increased about 45% since March of 2020, when the pandemic hit our country. In May, the median national sales price broke $400,000 for the first time in our history. Now, the median priced home costs about $130,000 more than it did in March 2020, when the pandemic had just started. So that's $50,000 more in January 2022. Inventory's improving, but it's near record lows, as we all know. It is getting a little bit better. I don't know if you're seeing that in your markets. But on the supply side, inventory's still lower than it was pre-pandemic. There are currently just over 1 million homes available for sale. And Dr. Yoon says we need to have 2 million homes to see a balanced market with more options for home buyers. Still, inventory is improving little by little. As of May, inventory was up 12.6% from April, and there was a rough 2.5 month supply of homes. 88% of the homes that sold in May were on the market less than a month. Let's talk about rising mortgage rates. They've dramatically increased since the beginning of the year. So I'm very grateful we refinanced last year, and I hope some of you did too. Rates are more than 2.5 percentage points higher than they were the first week of January this year in 2022, and as a result, buyers need to spend about $800 extra every month to purchase median-priced homes. Mortgage rates are expected to rise even further, above 6% in July. Now remember, this is Lawrence Yoon's crystal ball. The housing market has shown signs of cooling. Dr. Yoon predicts home sales will likely drop about 9% in 2022 compared to last year. Still, home prices will continue to rise, but they're going to rise at a slower pace. Dr. Yoon expects home prices to rise about 8% in 2022. As always, NAR will keep you apprised of the most up-to-date and critical market information so you can stay ahead of market trends. There are signs that the market is normalizing, but we know a healthier market is not necessarily a fair market. Significant challenges remain. According to NAR's 2022 snapshot of race and home buying report, the homeownership rate for Black Americans is about 43% and even lower than it was in 2010. That rate is nearly 30 percentage points lower than it is for white Americans, which means we have a long way to go, and we have a lot of work to do. NAR is taking action to make housing more accessible, equitable, and affordable. NAR is committed to the enforcement of fair housing laws, to support policies that promote homeownership for all qualified buyers, like the Housing Fairness Act, and to making homeownership more accessible through programs like the Black Homeownership Collaborative. NAR serves on the steering committee of the Black Homeownership Collaborative, which is a coalition of industry and housing advocates intent on creating 3 million Black homeowners by 2030. BHC's 7-point initiative includes proposals ranging from broadening access to mortgage credit to providing down payment assistance. Additionally, NAR is committed to ensuring realtors are doing everything possible to protect housing rights in America. Please visit nar.realtors/fair housing for training resources, which include NAR's new Bias Override Overcoming Barriers to Fair Housing online workshop. The training explains how our unconscious brains categorize people in the effort to process information more quickly. These mental shortcuts can lead to fair housing violations when clients are treated differently based on stereotypes. The course often offers tactics to help break down stereotypical thinking and ensure that all consumers are treated with equal concern and respect. Bias override, yes. Bias override is eligible for state-level continuing education credit if your state allows that. But I will also mention that we have a simulation program called Fairhaven, where you sell 3 or 4 homes. You don't get any commission for it, but you will learn something, and I promise you, I don't care who you are or how much you think you know, you will learn something. I also highly recommend the At Home with Diversity certification. That's a 1-day, 8-hour course. All right, moving on to advocacy, which is probably the biggest thing that your association does for you while you are out listing and selling property. There is so much more that goes on behind the scenes that our business as we know it today would not exist without the advocacy and the lobbying efforts of our staff and our volunteers. The massive inventory issue also affects our ability to expand home ownership to all who seek it. At the national level, NAR is working on multiple fronts to increase supply. NAR is working with the Biden administration, Congress, and our industry partners on solutions to increase home ownership opportunities. These include proposals to boost inventory through tax incentives, converting unused commercial space to residential, such as whether it be office space, a hotel, motel that can be converted into residential, and providing down payment assistance and tax credits to first-time home buyers. We're also discussing the possibility of a capital gains tax break for rental property owners who sell to first-time home buyers. NAR's advocacy efforts are paying off, and our work with the Biden administration on comprehensive policy making is building consensus that divisive action is needed. For example, the White House included a historic funding request for affordable housing in its fiscal year 2023 budget. And in May, the White House released the President's Housing Supply Action Plan. This shows how seriously the White House is taking our supply crisis. While progress has been made, much more needs to be done. We must all work together to address the inventory shortage and increase access to affordable housing. I urge you to lead the charge at your local and state levels. We need to spur housing production and to make affordable housing more accessible. You know why we're so successful in our advocacy efforts, because we aren't Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians. We are the Realtor Party. That is right. And if you don't know what that is, it is an alliance of realtors and realtor associations who work together to advance policies that strengthen the real estate economy. So I'm going to tell you about, in just the last year, we helped secure COVID aid for independent contractors, the self-employed, sole proprietors, and small businesses. Did you know that that was the first time in the history of the United States of America that independent contractors were part of a stimulus program? You can thank the National Association of Realtors. So I think my notes got all messed up with my printer. I don't really know what happened to that, but just know that there's a lot of work to be done. There's always a lot of work to be done. It doesn't matter what day it is. It doesn't matter what our market is. We have people out there lobbying all the time. We have our headquarters on Michigan Avenue, right next to the Wrigley Building in Chicago. That is where our headquarters are. But we have an equally beautiful building looking at our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. And that's where our lobbyists are and all the people who make things happen for us 24/7. So when you think about our lobbyists, which we have at every level, we have them here in Texas too. When we're in session, they are not sleeping. And I've always thought about doing a skit, a day in the life of a lobbyist in session, because they literally text each other at 3 a.m. Did you see that amendment to the amendment to the amendment on number 556? There's just so many bills that our states are going through on our behalf and watching what goes on. Because if it goes on in one state and the governments in the other states think, oh, well, that's a great way to raise some money. Let's do that in our state. We're watching for things like that. Like, how many of you have transfer fees? Okay, how many of you don't? Well, the ones that don't, that was because the National Association of Realtors spent millions and millions of dollars to make sure that our elected officials across the country got the message that if you want to mess with us, we have what it takes to come after you. And I had someone ask me one time, why did we give $3 million to the state of Montana to fight transfer fees when they only have 3,000 members? To set a precedence, to let our elected officials know around this country that you can go ahead and put it on your ballot, you can do whatever you want to do, but we're going to stop you before you ever get there. And there are people who have to pay transfer fees when they buy and sell. And just keep this in mind too. If you were voting on something and it said a $5 transfer fee, you would think, $5? I mean, really? It's not a big deal, is it? That's not the problem. Once it's in the hands of our elected officials, it could become 10% of your sales price.